Welcome to the Decent Crypto Podcast. Today is Sunday, April 2nd, and we are back with another recap. Matt, a lot to talk about today. A lot of things that you particularly enjoy. How you doing?
Man, I am so excited. Let's get into it. Let's talk about AIP-1, everyone.
AIP-1. We've talked about a lot of about Ethereum in the past, a lot of EIPs. This is the first AIP that we're talking about because this is AIP-1. Arbitrum is rug pulling all of its users and voting to send itself $750 million worth of tokens, or 750 million tokens, something like that.
Yeah.
Matt, what
it clocks
what
in
is
around
exactly?
$1 billion worth.
It's $1 billion. Yeah, they're just sending themselves $1 billion.
Yeah.
So yeah, Matt, on a more fundamental level, what is happening here?
So Arbitrum did their airdrop a couple weeks back, right? And you know, when you launch a token, it's hard to know exactly how to set up the token distribution. And you know, one of the silly ways that people tend to game this is they will put tokens into the foundation allocation. And then that foundation may have little to no oversight. Maybe it's made up of just founders. And so it's a bit of a way to double count the founders effectively, right? With no direct input from users. And you know, I think it's worth remembering that the Arbitrum token is at this point a governance token. The sequencer is still centralized.
It's not a gas token. It's not
a gas token.
That, right?
Yeah.
So it's not a utility
it's not
token.
A staking token. It's not utility. Yeah. There's zero utility outside of governance. And it's it's literally in the Arbitrum docs. It's here's what this thing's for. You can use it to vote. And it's okay. So the team proposes something called AIP-1, which is, you know, a little bit silly because the Ethereum improvement proposals are not I don't think they're generally votable matters, right? They're just kind of because the whole thing is decentralized and ETH is not a governance token. They're just proposals for things to add. And then the community gets to decide whether or not they want to partake, right? Social consensus wins out, and so something like EIP 1559 or 4844 or whatever can get into the protocol if it generally has the support of users, developers, you know, the community. AIP-1 instead is sort of a vote to funnel tokens from the initial allocation to the foundation. And then with just zero actual plan for how the foundation plans to use them.
And that initial allocation, who was that initial allocation to? Was that just supply that had not been distributed out yet, that was just held in the treasury, or what was that?
It's effectively that. It's the treasury getting, and then you transfer it to the foundation.
Okay.
The thing is, you know, it's all kind of theatrics anyway, right? It doesn't really matter where it was supposed to be initially or afterward, because users are voting and the votes don't count. It's like that show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? Welcome to crypto, where the votes don't count and the tokens don't matter. So when I first read about this,
why don't the votes count though in this situation?
The Arbitrum Foundation has come out and so the votes are overwhelmingly no, right? Most people are voting against this thing because they're a zero transparency transfer of about $1 billion worth of value to some people that are also the founders of the protocol. That's not cool, right? And look, one of the reasons you would do something like this is to hit that key 51% community allocation number, so that you can be decentralized, right? Most protocols attempt something like that, but if the community is just the founders, it doesn't really accomplish that goal. So most people look at this, they're $1 billion worth of value that is just going to get dumped on me, the
Yeah.
Arbitrum token holder, maybe
Right.
we're going to vote against that.
Yeah.
And so the first like talk I saw about this was actually a very well written Blockworks like research proposal.
Yeah.
Or Blockworks research is being a delegate effectively.
Yeah.
So a lot of times people don't want to vote directly in issues that the DAO has raised, and so
Hmm.
they'll select a delegate to handle their votes for them. Blockworks is a delegate for a lot of people, and they put out this thread on Twitter like, yeah, we're voting against this one. That was
Right.
like
Right.
a
That
while
was
ago.
the
It was like
first thing I
several days
saw as
ago.
well.
Yeah.
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 Um,
And since then, like more and more delegates have chimed in like, yeah, we're going to vote against this zero transparency, just like allocation of $1 billion worth of tokens to, we don't know exactly who, by the founders, probably the
yeah.
founders, with like no plan, no earmarking, no like actual plan for like what these tokens are going to be used for.
Hmm.
Um, I think if they wanted to do this right, they would have had like some kind of plan in place with some kind of like token out like sub allocation for how much they expect to use for each of those tasks. So for example,
Mm.
what does Arbitrum need? I don't know, more servers, right? Because they only have one server, and that's why like Arbitrum went down.
All right.
So super decentralized, guys, don't worry about it. So they might say, hey, like we want to allocate some number of tokens to like spend on server costs, and then people could vote on it. Or they could literally just have a plan of any kind, like we
Yeah.
want this much for servers, we want this much for developers, we want this much for airdrops, and like please vote on this. But
Yeah.
instead it was just like a blind like allocation of money to themselves, which is
Hmm.
pretty bad. It's not a good look, right?
Hmm.
But I am impressed with the community for pushing back, because since Blockworks like put out their like very thoughtful thread, others have done it too, right?
Yeah.
We
Most
have
people are
404
now in the
now, and like,
very. Yeah. Most people are now firmly in the no camp, it seems, on this one. And so it doesn't. I mean, I don't know. Like, it seems like it doesn't even matter, right? Like, most people have voted no. The tokens are transferred anyway, and Arbitrum can dump them at any time. So I guess this is all kind of for naught, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely absurd that you as the foundation would still transfer these tokens after everybody votes no, right? Like,
Yeah.
forgetting any kind of like whether or not you're allowed to. This is just a really bad look, right?
Yeah.
And
What was? Did they
I
provide
like.
any rationale, or like why they
So it
continued with
was
that?
purportedly it was their narrative is it wasn't actually a vote on whether or not to do this. It was a ratification of like a decision that had already been made, right? So if like at that point you might ask yourself, why have a vote? And this reminds me a lot of, I used to live in the co-op system in Berkeley, which is sort of like our like the last remaining vestige of hippie culture, you could say. And we would come together like every Sunday night and vote at council. And it wasn't like, to a degree, yeah, those votes kind of mattered, but also it was kind of like, if you voted for or against shit, like you're living in that house with people and they're your friends, or like someone you're dating, or like, people that you're like partying with. And so there's not a lot of wiggle room to actually vote. And a few people take it really seriously. They vote against stuff or they vote for stuff. But like a lot of times a vote was just sort of like a social indication of continued support for your friend that was putting up the issue at vote. I don't know. I'm sure it's not just like a thing that's limited to the Berkeley co-ops. I'm sure all sorts of clubs and, other things had this, right?
Yeah.
But it reminds me a lot of that. It's like vote theater, decentralization theater. And they're like, look, whoa, dude, guys, you guys got this all wrong, man. The tokens are transferring. Are you with us or against us?
That's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, I would
I
argue.
don't.
Okay, what do you? Yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts, and then I want to take the temperature on which one you think did a better job in the weeks following the airdrop. Optimism or Arbitrum? Let's
Yeah, I mean, oh, man, it's just hard to see how they can blunder this so badly. Like, it's like, I was gonna say that Optimism did such a bad job that Arbitrum, just by delaying their token airdrop, was like already in the lead. They already had much more activity. They were really, I don't know, they had great follower sentiment, all this kind of stuff. And then they did the airdrop. People were like, oh, let's see how much it's worth. And then it turned out to be worth way less than most people thought. But everybody was like, all right, whatever, we'll hold it. And then this bullshit. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, you had this on a silver platter. Like, you can be the L2 of choice from now until forever. And then it's like, why?
It's like, don't do this kind of thing in the bear market, right? Like,
Yeah.
I understand you're trying to cash out. It's like FTX raising at the pico top of like last cycle, right? It's like, if you know, like, part of this is like smart capital allocation, right? But you don't need to like transfer the billion tokens to like weigh down sentiment on your token price now. It's not gonna, you know, that could be $10 billion next cycle, right?
Yeah.
Are you guys out of cash? Like, do you really need the money? You can't do another seed round with like, and I mean, I want to say Arbitrum is one of those ones that had just like every VC in the space like had an allocation, like a party round. You know, it just seems like poor timing. But remember how bad Optimism was? Do you remember they had like OIPs that were submitted by community members? Like, I think we should, you know, ban anyone whose wallet address like sold the tokens or whatever. You know, there were all sorts of calls to make the, you know, to like try to punish people that sold the tokens. And Kobe had a really good like thread where he was like, what the fuck, guys, come on, like, this is, you know, is this market manipulation? Is this like, like, what are these tokens for? You know, he's like, I usually don't get involved in this sort of thing, but like, come on. So I would say like the look is not good, because now you have to ask yourself, like, do any of my votes matter if I'm voting?
Yeah. Of course not.
You know, to a degree, it's kind of like
think,
not your keys, not your Arbitrum tokens, right? And it's like, who has these keys, right? It should be like an on-chain governance measure that like the delegates actually do get to have votes that impact things, where like smart contract code is getting written, it's getting ratified by actual token holders. But it's very clearly not that, right? It's like there's like 5 people at the, you know, Arbitrum company headquarters. I think it's Off-Chain Labs, right? And their side grade 2 once, it was like, it's called Off-Chain Labs because all decisions will be made by by a group of people in Menlo Park off-chain.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's not like it sets a bad precedent because people have done this forever, but it's just like, look, you can't be saying all these things about decentralization and you know, fair governance and then do something like this.
Yeah, I mean, the L3 space has historically had a lot of this, right? Where it's like decentralization theater, right? It's like, we're going to decentralize the sequencer. Don't worry, guys. And it's like, you know, zkSync, I think, is taking an interesting approach here where they're like, look, we'll launch a token when it's necessary to decentralize the sequencer. And that really is the sort of like the saving grace for L2s that want to launch a token, is like, you can, you know, pretty reasonably say, I want to decentralize the sequencer, therefore I'm launching a token. It's like a good enough reason to have a token. And it doesn't just look like a scammy like money grab. But then doing this sort of thing is like, all right, what are the odds Arbitrum actually ever decentralizes the sequencer, right?
Very low chance. I mean, Optimism, same thing, right? Like, same exact situation. So
yeah, I think they'll do it when they're legally forced.
Yeah. But speaking of legally forced, like, do you think there's going to be any kind of action, you know, like against them for this kind of stuff?
Dude, it's a great question. I mean, look,
like, what about the DAO voters and like a class action, you know?
That's a great point.
Yeah.
We should fund a DAO to bring the legal case against off-chain labs.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I saw somebody was tagging Gary Gensler in the comments. Like, this is the kind of stuff the SEC needs on its radar. And some other anon replied, like, dude, don't tag the ops. Yeah. Okay,
I don't
speaking
know.
of
There's so many years
zkSync,
back, right?
yeah, I mean, they're not going to get to this for a long time, but it is one of the bigger ones. It's like over $1 billion market cap, $10 billion FDV. So, yeah, I mean, who knows if they've paid enough people in Washington, D.C. to not have the spotlight pointed towards them. All right, sticking on L2s, you mentioned zkSync. The zkEVM is here. Polygon zkEVM is here. All other zkEVMs are here. Matt, as an insider, what can you tell us about the zkEVM space?
As an insider, what I can first tell you is I should have paid more attention in these meetings. I don't know much.
Nice.
So the zkEVMs are super interesting, right? They're zk rollups rather than optimistic rollups, which in theory are more secure. In practice, I would say more secure, and they can rely more on like math and cryptography to secure your assets versus like the goodwill of optimism or like a combination. Yeah. Arbitrum slightly better because they have fraud proofs, but I think today only members of like the council are allowed to submit fraud
I
proofs.
see.
And the council, I think it's pretty fair to say that any kind of group of like decentralized council is actually just like one guy in a room at off-chain labs. I think like that's sort of the theme. And so zkEVMs are meant to be like much safer, much more secure, using the power of zk math to compress transactions, make them more efficient. And these things are true success stories in technology, I would say. Right. Like many people didn't think it was possible. I didn't think it was possible to have a fully functional zkEVM or like a close to fully functional zkEVM for at least like several years, right? I thought we were looking at the 3-year horizon, maybe 5-year horizon, as late as last year. I thought it was going to take until 2028, right?
Wow.
And in the meantime, we've managed to launch them, in 2023. It really is like an impressive like piece of tech progress.
So
Like
these
a field that
zkEVMs, right? Like, let's say I want to use one. I haven't been able to test the Polygon one yet. But let's say I want to use one. It's basically just like switching over in your MetaMask. Like, you just connect to the new Polygon zkEVM network, right? And then if I'm making transactions in that network, I was reading something where like the fees are pretty high right now, and actually the network scales in terms of cost as the transactions go up. So as there are more transactions, the gas costs will go down. We'll save that. But like, if I want to make transactions, is that just compressing the transactions and kind of moving them to this zkEVM environment and kind of making like reducing fees, or is it also making them private?
It's no privacy.
Okay.
So zk can be used for two things: privacy and compression. And this is effectively just compression.
Okay.
I would say right now it's a little bit of just like fucking block space arb, where like the Polygon zkEVM, for example, the full content of every transaction is still getting posted to Ethereum, but it's getting posted as call data rather than as like native transactions. And the economic model is just set up so that that's cheaper now. But it's still like the exact same data going to the exact same set of validators. It's a pretty weird one. And it's expected to go down by another factor of 10 when EIP-4844 comes up. There's a degree of like, how people get mad at ordinals because like they're like, whoa, the miners are not getting compensated for all of this extra data. I think you could kind of see a similar response from the Ethereum community. Like, it's very strange to me that EIP-4844 has such like across the board support. I personally would say this is bullshit, and we can't be just like flooding the network with cheaper transactions. And 4844 does open the doors for that, right? As long as it's kept in check with like a maximum, size of like call data that's allowed per block, then I guess it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But at the same time, right now, it's just like a little absurd that like you can post the exact same transaction data to Ethereum as you would if you were executing it on Ethereum, but pay a tenth of the cost or whatever. I mean, it's not a tenth of the cost right now because yes, there's no demand for this stuff. So this is like, I think this really fits into my larger narrative around block space fatigue, where there's just way too much block space right now.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
We had Optimism, we had Arbitrum, we had all of the alt layer ones, Solana and AVAX and Polygon POS, right? We had Phantom, Harmony.
Yeah.
We already had too much block space, but now with the layer twos, we have too much good block space, right? Too much quality block space, where it's like we have the ETH-1 block space, which is kind of sacred, right? In terms of like an NFT on the ETH-1 is the only place where outside of maybe Solana L1, people really do ascribe value to those NFTs.
Yeah.
Right. It's just a social consensus.
And the Bitcoin L1
when I say sacred,
now.
I mean that. Yeah, and the Bitcoin L1. Yeah. And so, the L2s aren't able to really do that. But with financial assets, with fungible tokens, it's like, well, what's a USDC on Arbitrum versus a USDC on the L1? If I can always, bridge them, it's fungible, right? So now there's higher quality block space on the L2s, and there's just too many L2s. We have Optimism, we have Arbitrum, we have zkSync, we have Base, we have Polygon zkEVM. Yeah, there's way too much block space, not nearly enough use cases.
If there's no farming incentives, on these DeFi protocols that are just going to give you crazy APYs, like why would you get in and start doing stuff unless you're an active trader? It's like why go on? Like you're basically just farming airdrops, right?
Yeah, I mean, Arbitrum found product market fit with GMX, I would say, although I've heard the UX there is like not so great.
GMX blows.
DYDX found really fantastic product market fit. DYDX is just a great product from what I hear, because US residents can't use it, obviously.
Yes, of course.
Definitely not with the Did you see this VPN bullshit?
Yeah, that's not gonna pass, is it?
I mean, there's no. Well, we'll go protest if that's the case, right? Like, yeah. I got nothing better to do. It's a bear market. Come join me. Anyway, yeah, there's just way too much fucking block space, man. And then Polygon zkEVM. Polygon was like telegraphing the date of the launch, like weeks or months in advance. March 27th, and then zkSync launches zkSync Era like March 25th, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's very funny.
Just out of nowhere. And unless you're farming the zkSync token, like why are you active there? It doesn't, and the fees are higher right now on these things because it does require you to pay gas and it has to get posted to the L1, and you need to, they need to compensate for the proof generation, right? Because generating the zero knowledge proof costs a little bit of like compute and server time. And I don't think they've quite got the economic model figured out yet in terms of like how to scale gas fees. But yeah, that's why the transactions overall right now cost more than ETH-1. I knew they were going to cost more than a sidechain like Polygon POS. I didn't think they were going to cost more than ETH-1.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really have to distribute that proof cost at that point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll see use cases. I think, obviously like levered trading is a great one. On Polygon, we're talking a lot about like central limit order books, which is kind of cool. And, at that point, boy, is it complicated to operate a sequencer. I think it puts you in a hot legal water. If you're like able to like prioritize orders in the central limit order book, like exchange. but we're probably 5-10 years out from anyone in law enforcement even knowing what we're talking. Like, our listeners barely know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I barely know what we're talking about.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that legal enforcement is a ways away. Yeah.
Speaking,
Okay.
I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you think? Do you have any plans to use the any of the zkEVMs?
I mean, I'll try them out, but not if the gas prices are more than layer one. I mean, I just use Ethereum for some basic stuff on Aave, and I was very, very bummed out at the gas fees. So if I have to pay more than that just to use one of these things, then probably not. I don't know.
How much does it cost to take out a loan on Aave right now on gas fees?
Man, it really depends. Like when I opened it 2 weeks ago, it was like $40 and maybe like $45, and then when I closed it, it was like $30.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, that's an order of magnitude cheaper than last time I did it, which was a couple years ago.
Well, yeah, that was peak of the bull market. That's why you got to be levering up now, dude.
Yeah.
But the good thing is now Aave is deployed on all these other chains, right? So you can see. That's what I realized afterwards. I was like, oh, I'm being such a bum about this. Like, I didn't have to do this on mainnet. I could have taken these loans out on any chain, and it would have been way cheaper.
That's a good point.
It depends how much you trust those chains, right? But it's like
Yeah, and there's a liquidity question as well, right? Like, if you're taking out large loans, you may wind up paying higher interest rates on less liquid chains. But I agree.
Yeah. You know what, dude? This is why I'm becoming a Solana bull again. I think it's time to. It's that time, dude. The phone is coming out. It's Solana season again, bro.
Look, I mean, the Solana narrative is something like the Atom 2.0 narrative, which is how much worse could it get, right?
Basically, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
The sellers are dry.
I really like Solana. I like the approach. I think that they have some smart technical work, right? And we can use this to plug our Solana deep dive, which I think was actually a great episode. And I just think that it's nice to have all the block space under the same security assumptions, right? It's nice to know what you're dealing with. People talk a lot about this vision of the world where you don't even know what chain it's being done on, and it's all abstracted away, and the user experience is so good it just feels like using a fintech app. It's like, man, boy, is it clear that we are 50 years out from that, right?
I was gonna say assumptions, I kind of want to know which chain my assets are on. At least
I mean, unless the bridges get way better, and then all you're doing is taking on that short-term risk of sending it across, send your asset from one chain to another, take out the loan on Aave, and then bridge out the assets again. Unless it becomes really just a truly intermediary step, and with zk bridging, then it's kind of I care a lot what chain stuff's happening on, actually. And I think that the trust assumptions behind Solana are reasonable enough that I am down to trust it in general. As long as the chain doesn't stop making blocks, I think we're good. Sometimes that's an issue, sometimes not.
Yeah, big if.
And the throughput, the capacity is just so much higher. I'm a Solana bull again as well. The problem is the tokenomics, right?
I know,
you never need that much SOL. I think if the Solana Foundation cared, I think they could revamp it, and I think that the Solana token would do well. But I actually don't think they care. I don't think they're as purely financially motivated as a lot of the other teams are. I mean, look, Arbitrum just fucking sent themselves $1 billion worth of ARB tokens, overriding a community vote against it, right? That's pretty fucking money hungry, right? The Solana Foundation literally won't even make a small change to the core protocol to create a more expensive gas market in order to or decrease minting of new SOL, which is kind of necessary because the validators need to submit these vote transactions, so they actually do need a lot of new SOL coming at them. But if they just change the economic model a little bit, I think it would work well.
Mm,
The thing is, it doesn't seem like there's any appetite for them to do that.
mm, hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's bullish, you know. Maybe that's kind of bullish where
What if
people
we
just
what if
trust
we
them
made
more and they ape in.
remember cheap ETH,
Yeah, the good old
that
days.
chain? No, the chain where
Oh,
it was like Ethereum. I don't know if I even directly remember it, but I heard the story and I love it. Someone like launched Ethereum and it was just set up to be exactly like Ethereum. I think it might have even forked like the like state machine. um and and they just set it so that the price was going to be like $10 an ETH or something. It was cheap ETH.
wow,
Yeah.
interesting.
What we need is expensive soul.
That's funny. Maybe we'll. Maybe, I think it'll happen, dude. Bull market, it'll happen again.
uh, I'm
Okay.
bullish.
Yeah, I'm bullish. Okay. Final thing. Binance, yet again, more Binance charges. The CFTC this time coming after Binance, coming after CZ, saying that they're running illegal market operations, insider trading, all this kind of stuff. Basically saying they're trading against their own customers. Yeah. What else was there? Anything else? Maybe some other charges. I don't know.
There was all the like KYC stuff
Oh
where it
yeah,
was
yeah,
like, terrorist financing, money laundering,
yeah.
blah blah blah. Yeah. You know, how do you feel?
Dude,
What are
with
your thoughts?
Binance, with Binance to me is like Bigfoot. You know, it's like I'm going to have to see. I'm gonna have to see CZ like behind some bars for me to believe all the Binance charges and FUD and everything. I mean, look, like on some level, I believe it. You know, it's like, do I think that there were insiders at Binance trading against customers based on customer data? Yeah, no shit. I mean, after having worked at two of the biggest exchanges in the world, yeah, obviously people are doing that. But do I think it's a good thing?
Wait,
No. Like,
not at the two biggest exchanges, right? But at like longer tail ones like Binance.
oh, dude, I
Or
think it's happening everywhere. I think for
you think
sure
it's
it's happening,
pervasive
dude.
across the industry? Okay.
Dude, Coinbase had to pay a fine when they went public. They had to delay their IPO because they were caught because an insider was wash trading Litecoin, and that insider was Charlie Lee, the founder of Litecoin, who was the CTO of Coinbase at the time. I know for a fact that that's something that happened. And like, yeah, you know, like that shit for sure happens. It happens at Coinbase, happens like everywhere. So I'm not at all surprised about that charge. Do I think that they set up a fund to like directly take trades against their customers, like similar to Alameda? Probably not. I think CZ is probably too smart to do something that stupid. Like just looking at how much they collect in trading fees, it's like idiotic for them to be doing something like that. Like they're like running a casino is like the most profitable thing in the world. Like you don't need to also at the same time be running a hedge fund. So I don't know. I think like and at the same time, like yeah, like were they serving customers in the U.S.? Like yeah, obviously, is some of this like I don't know, like some of this money laundering stuff probably true? Yeah, probably. But again, it's like
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to see the man
I mean, it's
behind
true at banks
bars.
too.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
I mean, like Wells Fargo has paid more in like fines that for damaging like its own customer. Like so okay, so Wells Fargo gets caught like fucking like doing shit like the customer takes out a loan, they think they repaid it. Wells Fargo didn't actually repay it. They've just been
Hmm.
sitting there charging the customer like behind the
Yeah,
scenes for like years, right? Like they've had to
yeah.
pay more
Well,
fines for this shit than like any of the allegations against finance, right?
yeah.
Like
And the thing is,
it's
the largest fine I think the CFTC can possibly levy is like $100 million. and that's like, I don't know, that's like how
That's
much
fine.
fucking Binance collects on interest on staked ETH, probably, or something. Like, I don't know. They probably don't care
Yeah,
about that
I
at
mean,
all,
it's
you
like the
know?
dog sitting in the room with the fire. He's like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Um,
So
I
yeah.
mean, I think bullish, right? I think this is bullish because, I mean, yeah, no shit. Like, are people out there like trading against people? Yeah. Are they like fucking
Hmm.
front running exchange listings? I'm sure they are.
Hmm.
Like not a single thing has surprised me.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and if the largest fine that they can possibly levy is like 100 million, that's almost like cost of doing business. It's similar
Oh
to a
yeah,
bank, really.
it
I
really is.
mean,
Yeah.
people forget just how fucking often like UBS and HSBC and like all these other banks are like, but those in particular are like getting fined for like, you know, like not running proper like KYC AML checks
Hmm.
and like actually allowing for like large amounts of money. Like, what about 1MDB? Remember that?
Oh yeah.
The like Malaysian sovereign wealth fund
Oh
guy
yeah,
that was
yeah,
just like fully just like embezzling the sovereign wealth fund with like the help of like a bunch of international banks. This is like very par for the course, cost of doing business kind of stuff.
yeah.
And
Hmm.
if this is the worst the Binance fund gets, it's got to be bullish, right?
Yeah, I know.
And you know, you can see this just reflected in the prices of the coins, right? Like oh yeah, I guess
Yeah.
since we last recorded a recap, the coins did well.
Yeah, coins have been
So
hot. Bull market,
um
baby. We're back.
we are so back. So yeah, I mean, like I'm not like I'm moisturized, I'm unbothered, I'm in my lane. Binance is getting sued. It's fine.
It's fine. It's fine. All right, Matt, you got anything else?
No, I mean, I think I'm excited for a lot of the stuff that we're gonna see happen over the next couple of months. Now that we have a lot of block space, I think the
Mm.
on-chain like casino is gonna come back bigger and better than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just excited to be a part of it.
Let's go. On-chain casino, baby. Bull market is back. We are all gonna make it. This has been the Decent Crypto Podcast. We'll be back in a few days with our newest deep dive. Have a good rest of your weekend, everybody. Until next time, stay decent.
None of this was financial advice, legal advice, investment advice, or any other kind of advice. If you're looking for advice, you are definitely in the wrong place. Until next time, stay decent.